You're listening to the Governors Podcast, which is hosted by school governors for school governors and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governors Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington and I support schools and academies as a governor, governance practitioner and a clerk. I'm also the founder of the National Black Governors Network, supporting the education sector in diversifying their governing boards.
And it's Olivia Hinds here, an under 30, unapologetically black female who is changing the face and space of school governance.
And you're listening to the Governors Podcast. Okay, let's get into today's topic.
So how have you been? I feel like it's been a while since we've recorded, let alone released an episode, because just to give people a bit of a timeline, depending on when you're listening to this, it is March 2023. And I think last month, February 2023, was the first month since we started this podcast that we haven't released an episode during term time, because we don't release in August because it's outside of term time. So how have you been?
It's just been unbelievably busy. I was saying to colleagues yesterday, actually, that usually what happens in governance, in my experience in governance, is the autumn term is just really hectic for everybody because it's a new academic year. All of the admin stuff needs doing, your declarations, your code of conduct, the keeping children safe and safeguarding, all of the stuff needs doing in autumn. So you're used to just crawling through it and just getting to Christmas. But then usually what happens in my experience is that the spring term,
it kind of levels out.
It's quieter, not quiet like nothing happens, but you know, there's a definite shift in pace and deadlines and demands. But that hasn't happened this year.
Same for me.
It's just been relentless, I think is the word that I use. Absolutely relentless. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to record, because it was like, oh my God, we didn't record.
We didn't record, but it's not out of not wanting to. It's it's our capacity has changed. And it's like, I think the thing that's different this time around is that we've both been adjusting to employment routines. And so, because for years we have been self-employed. So we manage our own diaries, our own time, our own schedules and everything like that. And so when it comes to recording the podcast, it was a natural element of our routine. But now we have employment status.
Now we got jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Full-time, part-time, whatever. Still having that on our plate, it's almost like everything else is now being juggled around those things, or you're fitting something else into the mix, and so something's going to take a hit in a way. And it's like anyone in any space, anything new you bring on, you have to almost evaluate or reevaluate or reassess anything that you've got going on currently and what impact it's going to have. I guess we didn't know what impact it was going to have because both of our employment roles are still within education governance. So we thought, oh yeah, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, it will fit. And then it's like, no, it's still got its own list of commitments and it still soaks up your time and your energy, etc. So
that's for me, it's given me a new
perspective,
understanding of governors juggling governance and their commitments to it. So so when you are, and I'll be honest, you know, when you are in a position where you are literally in control of your own time, as I have been for decades now, then it is harder to understand when somebody doesn't have that freedom.
Yeah, of course.
Because for me, I could manage my diary to suit myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I rarely, if ever, gave apologies for any meetings that I had. Very, very rarely. It was like, I can't even remember a time when I gave apologies for not being able to attend a meeting. Most of the time, because I was clerking, so the diary dates were set and that was it. But since taking on a temporary 12-month contract, I have lost track of the amount of times I have had to, quite rightly, because it's the job, had to give apologies to my governing board where I'm a governor because of a clash with whether it's a board or a meeting or a project or a commitment. It's my job. And that's just the way it is. So it has given me a greater appreciation for all of the governors out there.
Same.
You know, who are having to do that. And then because when you're either clerking or chairing an LGB or working in the governance space, and you're just seeing apologies and you're thinking, this person's always giving apologies.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's not that you have it, you create a negative impression or opinion of that person. It's just you're thinking, like, almost like if someone's giving so many apologies, that's when you start to question, maybe they should just step down, or is there an ongoing reason, or like, because you're not in that. And this is why diversity of background and I don't know, skill set is important, so that you can have those different perspectives around the table. Because if you only ever had entrepreneurs, you would assume that everyone is available to you all the time. And then if you only ever had people who are employed, then you would think no one's available and no one really wants to do it. And it's just to say that I'm looking at the apologies of others differently.
Yes.
Because I'm now someone, even though I haven't given apologies, there have been times, I will be completely honest and transparent, because that's what this podcast is all about. But I have had times where I see meetings coming up as a school governor and I say, do I deserve to give an apology this time? Because I have never given an apology.
I know you've struggled with that.
I've attended every single committee meeting, every single local governing board meeting since I began. If I have given an apology, it was probably the first one or just one. Like, but it's definitely less than 2 or 3, and that is for about 4 or 5 years running. Exactly. And so it was literally this year, I remember us having the conversation. I was like, have I earned
the right
apology?
Have I earned the right to give an apology?
It's almost like it's like nothing's clashing with the meeting. Physically, I could attend, but it's like mentally, can I, because I haven't given one yet, can I give one? Like, honestly, people,
and we had a whole debate about it, didn't we? And I was like,
I even brought my brother in on the conversation, who's not in the space at all. I
was like, Liv,
I was just like, can I?
Especially because you are traveling from Manchester to Birmingham to attend it.
Yeah.
So it's not even a case where, the school's around the corner or down the road, or it's a 20-minute drive.
No,
or
I've got to plan that. That's
it's in essence your whole day.
It is my entire day.
A day and a half, really.
Yeah. When you think of traveling there, traveling back, and everything like that. For me, I was literally contemplating giving an apology purely for my mental space, just to not to just abandon the meeting, but just to choose myself. Yeah. And just see if it would just allow me to just breathe for a term. And it sounds crazy because you think it's only I don't want to say it's only, I don't like using the word only, but I have approximately 9 meetings each academic year. Because I have the LGB meetings plus the 2 committees I sit on, and each of them do a meeting per term. So that's 9. And so it's like, it doesn't sound like a lot when you look at that in isolation. But when you add in all the other things,
you should never look at it in isolation.
You shouldn't look at things in isolation. Because it's good to isolate things to understand how each thing works, but you also need to look at the whole picture, the bigger picture. And so looking at everything else and thinking about how my routine has shifted and stuff like that. And so this is where I guess we're really showing compassion for those who have been juggling longer than we have in terms of between being a school governor, being employed, or having any other commitment, because it may not be employment. It could be another commitment that you have, for example, childcare, things like that, and knowing that people may give apologies because they genuinely cannot attend because they have childcare things to cover. So I think this episode is really about the recognition of what other people have got going on. Like, you don't know what the people around that table, the people on that governing board have going on in their individual lives. You literally only experience a percentage of people's lives. And this is how I look at social media as well. People show you what they want you to see, but it's basically 10% or even 1% at times of their entire life. You don't know what other things that person has going on. So I think it's really important to reflect on yourself, but also challenge your own opinions and the way that you view other people. So when you consider your governor colleagues, think about, okay, if they sent in an apology, don't make any initial judgment. I'm not saying that anyone does, but it's just to allow you to consider that that person could have things going on, and no one should ever have to over-explain why they cannot be in attendance somewhere, because that's personal to them. There's that aspect as well. And that takes the pressure off them feeling like they have to justify choosing themselves in that moment or in that scenario. But then on the flip side, give yourself grace. Like, allow yourself to know what's good for you on any particular day. And sometimes the best thing for you is saying no, or saying, I cannot be there. I cannot be present there, because being present there is me being absent for myself. And so I think that's a very important thing for individuals to consider when either you're entering the governance space, seeing if it's something you can take on, or you're already there and commitments change in other places. So then don't feel bad if you then need to reevaluate your position as a governor at that school or on that trust board or in that space or for that time period. I know some people who are coming to the end of their terms and they're using the end of their term to say, okay, I'm going to transition out of this space now. Don't feel obligated to continue if you feel like it's not right for you right now and you need a 6-month breather, or you need a 12-month breather, or you need a couple of years. That is okay. I think it's knowing that it's okay to say no. Not everything needs to, and I'm talking to myself because I'm very much someone who says yes to a lot of
everything. Yes. Okay. We're going to hear from our fantastic sponsors, Governor Hub, who are continuing to support us in all that we do.
Governor Hub is proud to support the Governor's podcast. As a leading provider of online governance support, we know that confident and well-equipped governors bring about positive and meaningful change. So when you've been inspired to do your best by really leaning in on the topics that matter, you can rely on us for the tools to help your board work better, the guidance and training to develop your skills, and a secure online body of evidence for when it matters most. Visit thehoot.news to join us and feel part of something bigger.
One of the things that I've noticed recently across a number of boards is retention. Recruiting governors is great, but retaining them, you know, I know some who have started and after the first meeting have disappeared. And I think some of it is down to induction, how it's sold. Because if you sell it to somebody as oh, it's only 3 meetings a year, you know, a couple of hours, then that to me is false advertising, because it's never that. And if you do that just to get somebody in, once they are in and realize, because you do realize quite quickly the commitment that's required, that is why you can lose somebody.
Because I guess individuals may feel blindsided. It's like, oh, they've now got a realistic picture, and it's like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And whilst I understand that you don't want to scare anyone out of volunteering, I think it's also important to have, I think this is why it's useful, extremely useful, to have different voices of people who are existing governors, because then if you have like 5 people or 3 people who speak to an incoming governor or a potential governor about their own individual governor experiences, it will give them a bit more context. So when you are able to speak to different people about what their governance experience has been like, then for you, it's like you can come in new, but you can also come in with your eyes open. And it's like, okay, my governance experience could be different, but at least I've had people who are already there, already in the space, even if it's on a different board or in a different trust or a different school, different setting, different location. I've been able to hear from them about what their experiences are like. So then you are almost doing a trade-off between the real truth behind the time commitment. And we have an episode in the early part of our season 1 about this, but the truth about the time commitment, but you are also going to learn what you gain. So you are able to really make a judgment across, okay, I can get involved. I know it's going to be more time than just the meetings, but just by being present and being proactive in the discussions, I will be able to gain this. So there are benefits to you that make the time investment worth it, if that makes sense. But
Absolutely.
you have to find that thing in it for you. Like that's what will keep you there. That's what's the
hook?
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
There has to be something.
And everyone's hook is different. Everyone's hook is different. And so it's just finding that for you and knowing when it's not for you. That's okay too. And it may be a case of,
or when it's just not yet at this in your current situation.
Exactly.
And so when I'm talking to schools, I will say to them, instead of trying to get somebody to become a governor on day 1, invite them into the school as a speaker. You know, if you've got somebody, I mean, you and I met an amazing guy completely from left field a couple of weeks ago on the national Black Governors Network event, and a barrister living in London and working in London, 30-year history in the legal profession, went to school down the road from me in Aston, Birmingham, and it's like, oh my days, where have you been? You know, and he hadn't heard of the Black Governors Network.
No.
He just decided that it was time in his life, at the point he is in his career, to give back. And so he sought us out. Yeah. You know, and what I didn't do was say to him, what I didn't do is say to him, oh, you know, there's a school here that I can get you in straight away, because I could see that he wasn't ready. So I walked him through the role and responsibilities. I did an induction before an appointment.
There we go.
Because people need to know. It's almost like starting a job without having a job description or having an interview or having anything that prepares you for what what the role is going to be.
Can I say this? You have primary school before you have secondary school.
Well, there you go.
There's stages to everything.
Absolutely.
There are stages to everything. And even when you're a year 7 student, it's not until you're in year 8 that you truly feel embedded in that school. I'd say year 8s feel more solidified, even though the year 7s are the newest and they're the youngest in there. You're still adjusting. You're trying to learn how to map your way around the school, and you're trying to understand your timetable. You have different teachers for different subjects and all that kind of stuff. Even primary school, you still have nursery and reception. You still have those early years. You're still learning things at home first. There's always a pre-stage before the initial stage.
And before the testing stage.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's the reality. I was, because at the moment, in my role at Ormiston Academies Trust, I'm currently attending LGBs. So aiming to bring national governance, because as head of governance, I have a sort of national overview of governance, but trying to take that locally, because although, a trust with over 40 academies, and there are, policies and procedures and the way that things need to be done, there's also an appreciation that at a local level, things are different.
Yeah.
A school up north is very different to a school down south.
Yeah.
And that's how you have to approach individuals and individual LGBs and things that are common around that particular region against another region. And it's understanding that no matter who you are, what your background is, what your specialism is, we bring our difference to make a difference.
100%.
That's the reality. That's
totally
the reality.
Agree.
And governors will do all sorts of things. I'll share this with you. I was speaking for the Diocese of Hereford a couple of weeks ago, and my session with them was an afternoon session, and I was scheduled to be at an LGB at 5:00 that same day.
Ooh.
And where I live, it's about an hour and 45 minutes travel.
Wow. Okay.
And so I literally finished my last slide at, I think it was 3:30. And then when I plotted the thing on my Google, I knew I wasn't going to make it.
I'm not making it. I'm not getting there.
So to attend this meeting, I drove as far as I could.
Yeah.
Down the M5 at about 4:45, found the next service station, sat in my car.
And did you meet him?
And joined the meeting and sat there until 7:30 and then made the journey home. So I know governors out there do make commitments. I know governors who have done that. Joined and not had their camera on because they're in listening mode. I know governors who have sat in their car whilst their child is at football practice or dance rehearsal, and I suppose what I'm trying to say is that to all governors out there, we see you, we celebrate you. We celebrate you. We celebrate you.
We're grateful for the efforts that you put in and the way that you find a way to spin plates. The way you find a way to spin plates, especially because a large proportion of those in the governance space, it's volunteering roles. So you are volunteering your time, your value, your efforts, your investment. You're there to give back or feed forward. You're there to feed forward into the current and future generations. You're there to support schools, but also challenge for accountability. And so it's really important that you celebrate yourself, but that it's also that you feel celebrated by others. And this includes everyone in the governance space. This is not just this is not just school governors and academy trustees.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
talking about the
anybody
clerks
volunteering. Yeah.
and the governance professionals. Because I've attended a meeting, I think it was this calendar year, so it was definitely during this recent academic year, where the only person who couldn't be physically in the room for the meeting was the clerk. And so the head teacher had the laptop set up, so the clerk was virtual because she was unwell,
yeah,
but unwell to attend physically, so that it didn't cause anyone else to become unwell, but not too unwell to not do the clerking for the meeting. So having that,
shout out to clerks, we do that so often.
And I thought it was phenomenal. I think it was a meeting I was chairing, actually, because I think it was a committee meeting it was end of January, had a teaching and learning committee meeting, and so our chair was our clerk was virtual, and so everyone else was in the room. And so it's chairing a meeting like that. That's an experience I've been able to have, because I now need to make sure that the clerk can clearly hear the discussion to minute effectively. And so it's really important to recognize that everyone who is involved in the discussions and the composition and the coordination of that governance structure feels valued, feels appreciated, regardless of whether they've attended 50% of the meetings that year, because that's all they could give that academic year, or whether they've attended all of them, most of them, some of them, whether they are not necessarily one of the governors where they have voting rights on decisions being made, but they are a part of the process. So this also means being appreciative of the senior leaders who turn up to those meetings and prepare those papers, because they are literally coming out of a school day. And this is assuming that the governor meetings are in the evening, because I know some meetings take place during the school day or at the top end of the day. But for the meetings, the majority of meetings tend to take place in the evening to accommodate different schedules for parent governors, staff governors, community governors, etc. But imagine you're a senior leader who enters school at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and you know that you have a meeting at 5:30, 6 p.m., which means you are in that school all day, and then you still have to travel home. So this is why I say we also need to celebrate the senior leaders, head teachers, and their team who are present in those meetings, and they present their papers. So read them. It's that kind of thing. It's really, you've got to juggle everything. And this goes back to the point I was making. I think this is us going into takeaways a bit now. At the beginning of the episode, where I said, take into consideration every individual around that table, and that each person has their own set of circumstances. So you don't know what it took to get them there, but they are there. So let's do what we can as a unit, because that's how the governing board is supposed to work. Let's do what we can as a unit to support the progress, the movement forward of this school, and the student and staff committee involved, because student and staff communities involved, because you don't know what it's taken for every single individual in the room that day to show up.
Yes.
And as you said, like, you were literally at a service station attending that meeting. And so I really just want to make this a recognition episode, just a thank you to everyone.
We know it was
what you do.
we know it was Governor's Awareness Day last month.
At the end
so we're a few weeks late, but no, the recognition is still heartfelt.
Of course.
Absolutely.
So what's your takeaway? I think I've done my takeaway in terms of just making sure that, one, I am present with myself as a priority, like top priority, being present with myself and recognizing what I need mentally and physically and emotionally, and staying balanced, but also being considerate and compassionate for other people. Not to say that I wasn't before, but I think once you step into someone else's shoes, and I think that's what I've been doing for the last few months.
Yeah, you see it.
I've now stepped into the shoes of someone who has a different combination of priorities and responsibilities. And so I now can see it from a different perspective. So I'm no longer able to say yes to everything. So when I'm getting emails from my clerk or my head teacher saying, we're doing a call out for governors to be involved in this, and I can't say yes to it because it's on a day. Exactly, it's on a day that I'm working, and I can't step away for it for that element. Whereas before, when I was controlling my own diary, I could be like, yes, sure, I could be there when I was 15 minutes down the road, and I was able to take on further responsibility. But yeah, now I'm stepping into someone else's shoes, and that someone else is being, having the mix of employment as well as doing volunteering. So that's my takeaway: consideration and compassion for myself and for others.
My takeaway, I think, is wearing my governor and trustee hat, because those are the two roles that I have. But based on my experience as a clerk, governance professional in the space as well, is to say to governors and trustees, trust your governance professional, trust them with the truth of your situation, trust that they can be held in confidence to know what's going on with you, and deliver that in a way around the table that protects you.
Yes.
Because if you're just absent or you're not sending apologies, then naturally, people think that you're disengaged or disinterested, when that can be so far from the truth. So, and I've done this as a clerk. I will give apologies early if there's a clash that I'm aware of, so that it's known, and I do that directly to my clerks. And I also, when I have served as a clerk, if I see something happening, if there's an apology, I will check in. I don't assume that the chair is going to do it. I will check in, and then almost create that link between the board and the governor, as it were. But I suppose what I'm saying in a nutshell is communicate. If you're not communicating with anybody, communicate with your clerk
at the very least.
At the very, very, very least, because they are unbelievably important in that space when it comes to assisting you and advising you. I mean, I've advised somebody to stand down rather than them hitting the 3 meeting absences and being terminated.
I hear you.
Nobody wants a termination against their record.
No.
So it's always better to resign or stand down. Or recently, I've advised a chair who wanted to retain somebody for their specialism, but the person was struggling to get to meetings. I says, well, move them to an associate member role so that they're freeing up the vacancy. They're not showing as absent or apologies constantly, but you can retain the specialism and draw them into the school in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, that's another episode. But that's a really good point. It's a really good point. That makes me think.
There's always a way, as Oprah always says, find another way.
Yeah, I really hear that with communicating with the clerk. I've always found myself communicating with the clerk. It just helps, because at least one person understands.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Brilliant.
Good. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governors Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited, and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com. governorsspodcast.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governors Podcast. Let's connect.